I would like to say hello to everybody. You are all more than welcome to our presentation. Today, we are joined from Michigan in the United States by Mike Moats, who will be giving us a presentation titled Creative Ways to Photograph Flowers. So Mike is going to discuss with us the equipment that he uses. He's going to talk in detail about some of those technical aspects, but he's going to discuss also how we can find character in flowers, and various different lighting techniques that we can use for that. Um, he is an international award-winning photographer, especially from the macro viewpoint. He is a Tamron image master. He works with Vanguard Pro. He's written many articles and had them and his images published in many different magazines. He also does workshops throughout the United States and other parts of the world. So he is going to be well placed and well positioned to give us a very good presentation. Hello, everybody. I don't know whether you heard me there, but I seem to have been muted. So apologies about that. I don't know what happened or why that happened. Um, Mike, did you hear my introduction or do I need to do it again?
No, I am fine. I heard everything.
Okay, you heard everything. Perfect. Right.
Yes.
So, just before Mike starts, I'll just remind people, if you have any questions for Mike as we go through, please type them into the chat facility. And when we get to the end of the presentation, I'll ask them to Mike on your behalf. So, Mike, I'll hand over to you.
All right, let me get my screen up. All right, so I am going to start off with, let me get my clicker working here. There we go. I'm going to start off with the equipment that I use. It'll just be a brief section of this on the equipment. Now, I am using a Fuji X-T30 Mark II mirrorless camera. Now, one thing that I've always done in the 21 years I've made my living doing this teaching workshops is I've always used camera bodies that were under $1,000. And the reason why is because 60% of the people that would come into my workshops were using camera bodies under $1,000. Now, if I was using, say, one of the Nikon $6,500 professional bodies, those people are going to leave my workshop saying, well, Mike's got great images. He's got an expensive professional camera, and I've got a camera under $1,000. I won't get images as good as Mike. So I've always used camera bodies that were under $1,000 just to show people that you don't need an expensive camera for this type of photography. Now, that XT30 Mark II in the US sold for $899. So it's an inexpensive mirrorless camera. Now, for the lenses, most people tend to use macro lenses, and I did for many, many years. But about 10 years ago, the lens companies started coming out with zoom lenses that had what they called macro capabilities. So they weren't as close as say a true macro lens would be, but they get in pretty darn close, close enough for our flower photography. So I use 18 to 400, which is what you see here on my DSLR camera. And then for my mirrorless camera, I'm using the 18 to 300 Tamron lens. This was shot with the 18 to 300 lens at the Chicago Botanical Garden. That is a cactus flower. Now, the nice thing about having a zoom lens is when you're in a botanical garden, you have to stay on that walkway. And if you have a subject like I did on this day, that's 4 or 5 feet in off of that pathway, I can't really get in close with a Tamron lens, a macro lens, and move in close. So with my zoom lens, I could stay on the pathway and zoom in on this subject and get a nice tight shot with that zoom lens. This lens will shoot as small as 1.5 inches by 2.5 inches. That is a pretty small area, 1.5 inches by 2.5 inches. Now, 90%, at least 90% of what I photograph is areas that are larger than 1.5 inches by 2.5 inches. So I don't even use my macro lens anymore. I'm just strictly using the zoom lens because, again, I get that extra reach when I need to when I'm in areas where I can't get close to my subject. I always work on a tripod 100% of the time, and partly because I'm shaky. I'm not real steady with the camera hand holding, and I tend to use a little higher f-stop numbers, which is a little slower shutter speeds. So I am on a tripod 100% of the time. Now, as far as any type of accessories, we don't have enough time to go into all the accessories you could carry with you, but I want to make sure I cover the most important. It's a diffuser. This is as important as the camera, the lens, and the tripod. You have to have one of these. Now, this is a Dame's rocket flower, and you can see the top portions where the petals of the flower are. They look kind of a whitish pink color, but they're not supposed to be whitish pink. They're actually purple. Now, a lot of times you might be out on a sunny day shooting and you'll get that kind of washed out color. This was shot on a cloudy day. An overcast day is when I photographed this. Now, on overcast days, when you have subjects that can sometimes run parallel towards those clouds, you get enough intensity of light and also reflection off those clouds that can wash out colors on your subject. So what you need to do is, I use a 12-inch diffuser. Some people call them translucents. It's just a white mesh that allows some light to come through but blocks out all the bad light. So once you put that translucent over top of your subject, you get the color that's the actual color of the flower back. So you can see the image on the left, that's no diffuser, image on the right with the diffuser. So very important tool. If I didn't have my diffuser that day, this is what I got to deal with, is the image on the left side. Now on that same cloudy day, I'm walking down a pathway, I look to my left and I see this leaf. And I see the top of that leaf. You can see the top of that leaf is washed out. Now, once I put my diffuser over the top of that leaf, I get my color back. Now, the color is not quite as intense on the top as it is on the front of the leaf, but at least in my post-processing, I can go in there and darken down the top to match up with the front. But if all I had to work with is that image on the left, there's no color there, and I'd have to somehow get some color back in there to match up with the front. So very, very important tool. Now, what do I do on a sunny day? On a sunny day, I'm going to diffuse my subjects, my flowers. I'm going to diffuse them 100% of the time. There's three bad things that happen when sunlight hits your subject, directly hits it. It can alter the color of the subject. It can wash out the color of the subject. And it can also cause shadows in areas you might not want shadows. Now, on the image on the left, that is a sumac branch, and that is early morning sunlight right at the horizon hitting that branch, directly hitting it. And it has altered the color of those leaves to a kind of a yellowish green. Also, it has a couple minor shadows on the right side of the image over here. Let's see, get my little cursor right in there. No big deal, but sometimes you get a lot of shadows, and you don't want those shadows. So once I put the diffuser between that sumac and the sunlight and shade it, the image on the right side, that is the actual color of the leaves. And if you notice on the right side, there's no more shadow there. So you've brought the color back, any type of washed out color you bring back, and also any shadows you eliminate. So that is a very, very important tool when you go out and do your flower photography. Make sure you have one. Now, I carry a 12-inch wide diffuser, which I find is sufficient for what I do. Some people like a 20-inch or a 22-inch, a little bit larger. I like the smaller ones, just more compact. Now you're wondering, do I have to hold this diffuser? Well, you could hand hold it. I hand hold it a lot of times over top of my flowers, but you could also purchase one of these clamps, P-L-A-M-P. It's made by a company called Wimberley here in the States. And you can see a large clamp on one side, flexible tubing. On the other end, you see a smaller clamp. Now, when I'm in close to my subject shooting, I could actually just attach the clamp onto the leg of the tripod that you see here. Now on the other end, you see the clamp is holding my diffuser for me. So now I can work my camera and not have to worry about holding that diffuser over top of the subject. But let's say you're using a lens like maybe a telephoto macro lens or my zoom where I'm back 3 feet from that subject. If I attach that to the leg of the tripod, that flexible tubing is not long enough to reach out and hold that diffuser over top of my flower. So Wimberley, they came up with a stake system. Now, it is a hollow plastic tube, and in one end is inserted a screwdriver. And when you want to make it into a stake, you pull the screwdriver out, reverse it, put the handle in first, and the shaft of the screwdriver becomes the stake part. And then you can stake it next to your flower, and then take your clamp and clamp it onto the stake, and that'll hold your diffuser over top of your flowers. That way you're independent of it, and you can move your tripod back or closer or to the sides or however you want to do it. They also show on their website that you can stake next to your flower and then attach the clamp onto the stem of the flower. That way, if you have a little slight breeze on the day you're shooting, you can steady that flower from moving. The clamp on that end also has some foam inside so that when you clamp onto the stem, it doesn't do any damage to the stem of the flower. Now, I've been shooting indoors a lot over the years that I've been photographing because we get winter here in Michigan, and it's also hot in the summertime. So I do a lot of flower photography right in my home. Now, as you can see, I'm on my stairway in my home. You're probably thinking that's kind of weird, but I have a 2-story high foyer at the front of my house. And that big giant window at the top there floods that stairway with beautiful natural sunlight and just amazing light. That's the brightest place in my home. So that is why I'm on the stairs there. Now, when I first started shooting indoors 20 some years ago, I was using black materials and white materials as my background. And so all my flower photography was coming out with black and white backgrounds. And it looks nice, a little artsy looking, but I got a little tired of it. I wanted something to look more natural, like I shot those tulips out in a field somewhere. So now I'm using kind of a more natural looking green behind my subject so that it looks more natural, like it was shot outside. Now, what I do to create these backgrounds is I go out to one of the fields at one of the parks near my home. Now, I've got my tripod set up. If you have a macro lens, this is what you'd want to use for this because the macro lens does much better than a zoom lens for what I'm going to show you. Now, one thing you've got to make sure you do is set your aperture to the smallest f-stop number. So that could be a 2.8, 3.5, depending on your lens. Now, I have focused, manually focused, no autofocus here. Make sure you're manually focused on the subject. And this is the grass that I focused on. Now, when you are manually focusing and you get that subject in focus, you have that focusing ring on your lens, and if you slightly go to the left or slightly right of that focus point, the subject starts to go out of focus. So what you want to do is rotate that lens or that focusing ring. Mine tends to work best when I turn it to the right side. You know, you can do either way, left or right, but I tend to do right because it works a little better. And I will rotate that focusing ring to the point where that subject that you just saw will go completely out of focus to a solid color. And when you get it there, you photograph it and you end up with that right there. So that grass that you see in focus there with the lens taken out of focus will produce that image there. And that is a natural green in nature that I can use indoors behind my subjects to give that appearance that I've shot it outside. Now, let's say you're looking at that and you're thinking, nah, it's just a little too solid for me. I like a little texture in there, a little blotchiness maybe. There's another subject that I'm going to shoot. So instead of taking it to a solid color completely out of focus, I leave a little bit of detail in there. So something like that right there. So you have a little bit of texture in there, a little bit of detail. Maybe you like that better than a solid color. Another example, just shooting groups of flowers at botanical gardens, taking them out of focus, leaving little shades of colors in there. This is one in a field where you had yellow flowers and blue flowers. And again, just taking out, leaving a little bit of details of the flowers and the colors. But again, you could take it to a solid right completely out of focus if you wanted to. Want to vary your colors because when you're shooting indoors, depending on the color of the flower you're using, you may want to use a complementary color in the background behind the flower. So have a large variety of backgrounds. Now, you'll want to print these on a matte paper, all right? That's better than using glossy papers or semi-gloss or lusters because sometimes that sheen on the paper can cause a little glare on the background. So matte papers, no sheen on there is the best. You'll want to put some kind of a backing board on these prints so you don't have this floppy print. You can use matte board, which is what we use for framing our images. You can use foam core, which is the material they put on the back of a print when you frame them, or cardboard. And you can get those at any of your hobby stores. that carry any type of materials for for framing images. Now you also want to get some carpet tape. Now, yeah, I know I'm talking to people all over the world here. So in the U.S. here, we have some home improvement stores that have carpet in the stores, and they will have a roll of carpet tape. Now, carpet tape has adhesive on both sides of the tape. Now, what I do is cut my background the same size as my print, lay it on a table, then I cut 4 strips of the carpet tape, adhere those 4 strips onto the background, and then I will pull off this side, this strip right here, which will expose the adhesive so that I can lay the print right on top of it and it'll stay there forever, won't go anywhere. All right, now clutter is our big problem. Clutter and actually wind. Wind is another one, but I'll talk about that at the end. Clutter is a big problem, of course, because when we're out shooting our flowers out in nature, we are going to have lots of clutter behind our subjects. I have a couple of cone flowers here. I like this little composition right here, but as you can see, I'm going to have a really distracting background. And with our flower photography, we usually like to try to keep that background kind of clean back there and not so much of that distraction going on. Same with these prairie cone flowers, same thing. They grow in tight clutter. And so any of the 1 or 2 you want to try to shoot here, you're going to have a mess back there. Another shot here just with some background color there, and that's what we deal with when we're shooting flowers. In botanical garden, it's the same thing. If you're shooting flowers in botanical garden, they generally have multiple subjects planted around those very tight, and you're going to go ahead and try to photograph this with multiple subjects in the background, and it takes away from your flower. All right. I have a family farm not far from where I live that grows flowers, and they allow photographers to come in and photograph the flowers. And you can see I have rows and rows behind me there that I can shoot, but you can also see they're very close and tightly packed together, making it tough to shoot. So quite a few years ago, it dawned on me that, I was using these natural backgrounds that I was creating in my home when I was in my home and I was using these backgrounds. And it was mainly because I needed to get rid of the background, the stairs. And I started to think, why am I not taking these backgrounds when I go out into the fields, into the farms, and in the botanical gardens and using them there? So that's what I started doing, and that made life so much easier. I don't worry about clutter anymore. So in this little farm right here, I just find a nice pair of flowers that I like, pop my background behind it, and I get a nice shot. All right. I can also go into a little higher f-stops so I can get a little more depth of field because I don't have to worry about reaching back and pulling in any of the background, shooting at a little higher f-stops. So this is on Madeline Island. I do a workshop there in June each year, and it is just full of lupins, beautiful island full of lupins. And so this is one of the students, and you can see she's using her background behind the flowers. And here's a pair of students. They're getting ready to shoot this other little group here. And so what they get is images like this. They find a nice composition, a nice, group of flowers, nice composition like we have here, a nice little pair of lupin with some leaves. And then with that background, that gives us a nice clean background behind there. We don't have to worry about all that distracting stuff in the background. Same with this here. You can see I've just placed my background behind it, and then I crop out what I want in post-processing. You don't have to get the background in the whole framed area that you framed up, as long as it covers the area that you are going to crop out when you get into post-processing. So I look at this subject, I determine what I'm going to crop, make sure my background covers it, and then crop it in post-processing. Same with this guy here. In other words, a couple leaves in here, which I know that I'll just clone those out when I get into post. But yeah, that just makes life so much easier. It's the simplest way you can shoot flowers. This is a field of woods that's full of lily of the valley flowers, beautiful little flowers, and they're very tough to shoot. You got to get down real low to the ground. But there was one little section at the top that I needed to clean up with the background, and so I used that. Now, if you notice what's holding the background, that's the plamp and the stake. Yeah, so it has dual purposes. See, it holds your diffuser for a while, then you can turn around and use it to hold your backgrounds. And there is the flower that I was shooting. So all I needed to do is clean up this little area up in here. Otherwise, I would have the clutter of the leaves in the background. I was just at a little nature center and they had this nice iris here and I just used my background and that cleaned that right up. Even in botanical gardens, I've used them. Now, I will tell you this, if you're going to go into a botanical garden, I have never once, ever, in the years I've been doing it, had anybody that worked at those botanical gardens come up and tell me that I can't do what I'm doing. Now, here's the thing. I am always making sure that I'm very respectful not to touch anything with that background. I only choose flowers that I know that I can get the background behind it without touching anything. Now, if I go in there with that background and start banging flowers and plants out of the way, I'm surely going to have someone say, hey, you can't be banging things with your little backgrounds there. So if you're going to do this in a botanical garden, just be respectful of the plants. Don't touch anything. This is in a private garden on Madeline Island, and this lady's shooting this, and I was helping hold the background and the diffuser to stop that sunlight. All right, print sizes. What sizes do you make? Well, I have different sizes for different, types of flowers. Lupin flowers, which are very tall, I might carry, 16 by 24s. But most of the flowers I shoot at the parks near my house in the wild, I can get by with an 8.5 by 11, which actually fits in that backpack right there. Most backpacks have an opening where you can slide in a laptop or a notebook. Well, that becomes the area that I put in my background. So 8.5 by 11 is what you see there, and that fits into that backpack. And that works great for 90% of what I shoot around where I live in the local parks. Framing your subject. So when I shot this image in 2004 with my first Fuji S2 6 megapixel camera. Remember way back then, 6 meg camera? That was the first digital cameras that came out. And you had to pretty much frame up your subject exactly the way you wanted it because you could not do a lot of cropping on those images. Otherwise, you'd lose a lot of details and stuff. So in the early parts of digital, of course, we had to make sure our framing was pretty exact in the camera. But now with today's cameras, my two cameras are 26 megapixel cameras, and I don't have to worry about shooting in tight and shooting perfect framing. I just shoot larger areas and crop out what I want in post-processing. Same with this here, just shoot a larger area, crop out in post. So that makes life a lot easier. This image here, I only really wanted this guy right here, this part here. And I could get in closer than that with my lens, a lot closer, but I didn't feel the need to because I knew I could crop it out in post-processing. Natural backgrounds. So let's say you don't have any backgrounds when you go out to shoot. Sometimes you can find natural backgrounds behind your subject that kind of helps complement the subject. This is not what you want for a natural background. There's a lot of different chaotic things going on back there and a lot of different types of subjects, black holes and all that. That's not what you would want as a natural background. What you want is a single subject background, not multiple subjects. So this lupin here, beautiful lupin contrasting really nice with those green ferns. But you notice what I have? I have a single subject in the background. That is so much easier to understand with that type of a background opposed to lots of different types of background that are cluttered. This is a pair of birch trees. The birch trees were in the background behind that lupin there. So you have a single subject of birch trees. Here's another one, lupin. Here, they were growing right next to this tree trunk here. So that's a single subject background behind there, see? And I can go in and crop that out. This is a trillium flower, wildflower, growing right in front of this old decayed stump that was on the ground. So the stump becomes a single subject background. This is oh my God, bunchberry flower, and it was growing right through this moss. So the moss becomes the background. Again, a single subject background. And some more bunchberries, and they are growing from the base of a tree trunk. So the tree trunk becomes the base. And this little bunchberry, look at this little guy right down here, all by himself, and this big old dead tree trunk as the background, single subject. And some little daisy flowers, again, single subject background. And these are some flowers that I put on these dewy oak leaves. It was in the fall, the rain had come down and left these raindrops all over the oak leaves, and I brought the 3 flowers out and placed them on top of there. So the leaves become a single subject background. And this is a flower that grew up through the crack in that stump. This is an old tree that they cut down at one of the parks, and these are spotted knapweed flowers that seeds got in that crack and the flower grew right out of there. So the trunk becomes the background single subject. And of course, cactuses, you can shoot cactus flowers and the cactus itself becomes the background. Boring flower photography. All right. Now, how would a beginning photographer compose a flower photo? So say you give a camera to someone that's never photographed a flower before. Say, here's my camera, go out and shoot a flower and let me see what you come up with. Basically, what you're going to see is this right here. A flower that is in dead center in the frame. It's going to be really small in the frame so that you're seeing way more of the background clutter. And it's going to have that clutter back there because, of course, they're not experienced. They don't know what they're doing. But they're going to look at that and think they did a great job. But that's pretty bad. All right, now most of you are all better photographers thinking, well, I know enough to photograph that flower using the top third of the frame, that rule of thirds, top third of the frame, and a stem underneath it, and a nice clean background, see? And you think you've done really well. Well, the problem is you've only documented that flower. You haven't created anything artistic with that flower. It's just a documentation. And you know what? These flowers have been done like that a billion times. Okay. So you're not impressing anybody with a shot like that because it's already been done to death. Okay. Now, I'm not telling you not to shoot that shot like that. I have all the flowers I've ever shot. I have the boring, what I call the boring shot of that, just a documentation. So I have those. I've done them too. And I'll continue to do them. But the thing is I don't keep repeating them over and over. All right. So this is a little botanical garden I was at with one of my students from my workshops, and she's all excited because it's spring and the tulips have just popped up, and she's going to photograph the tulips. She's got her camera tripod way down on the ground. She got a framed up shot, and she says, Mike, look through my viewfinder and tell me what you think of this shot I just set up. And what I see is that right there, boring shot of a tulip. And I said to her, I says, Susan, I says, how many times have you seen a tulip composed like you just composed this one? She goes, well, yeah, I've seen it a lot like that. I says, yeah, again, it's been done a billion times. I says, you probably have a shot like that at home on your hard drive already of a tulip, right? She goes, yeah, I do. I says, well, you've already accomplished that shot. Why are you repeating it? You're just wasting your time. If you've already got a shot like that at home, then move on and do something different or find a different way to photograph it than the standard boring tulip shot. So I looking through this little patch that I just showed you there, and I happened to find this nice little composition of a tulip bud cased in this green sheathing. And I said to her, I says, look through my viewfinder and tell me if you've ever seen a shot like this before. And she says, nope, never seen a shot like that before. And there it was. It was just this tulip bud that was encased in this green sheathing. Okay, so it's kind of cradled in there. And then in the front, I've got two leaves, one going in this way and one going that way. Just perfect little composition waiting to get photographed. And again, this is something that I've never seen anybody shoot it like that before. I've never seen a shot like that. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for something that's different. If I'm going to just shoot everything like everybody else is shooting, then I'm not gonna really make a mark in flower photography. I also found this one here. I thought it was interesting. And then I shot this one here. A little different perspective on this. So I got 3 images out of that little tiny plot of tulips, and my student was willing to go home with a boring shot of that tulip that's been done to death. All right, now finding character in nature or in our flower photography. So you probably all know someone in your family member, some friend, some coworker, neighbor, something that's a little bit odd, a little bit different from the rest of the human population. And what we do is we call those people characters because they stand out from everybody else. They're unusual, they're different. So what we want to do is we want to go out into our flower beds and out into nature, botanical gardens, and we want to find those characters. Ones that are a little bit different from all the rest of their species. Now, is it easy to find them? No, there's only a small amount of characters that are out there, but we still have to be out there looking. Where do you find them? Again, you find them in the botanical gardens, you find them in the woods, the fields, and I find them at the flower store at the local grocery store. This is a black-eyed Susan flower. Nothing artistic here, just documenting the flower, show you what it looks like. They have a textured dark center, and then they have evenly spaced petals all the way around the outside. 99.9% of them in the fields that I go to look like that right there. Now, I already have the boring shot of that, so I'm not going to repeat that. I'm out there looking for those characters. So one morning I'm out there searching around. I happen to see this little guy right down in here. If you can see him, small little yellow flower right there. And I notice that two of the petals are going in the opposite direction of all the other petals. That's different. See, that's not like all the other flowers. So I get in there, set up my tripod, get in nice and close, and there's the shot. Now you see the two petals here that are going the opposite direction. And look at this petal here. Look at how it wrapped itself around this petal here. Now that's a very unusual black-eyed Susan. That's what I'm looking for because I'm showing you something you've never seen before. See, if I'm showing you that other shot where the flowers in the top third with a stem under it, most people have seen that a bunch of times. Now, what I always tell people when you find a character like this, you want to shoot a lot of different compositions because that flower doesn't exist anymore. It's been erased from the environment. All right, so while you're there with your setup, shoot a lot of different compositions. This just happens to be my favorite is the vertical. I did shoot a horizontal and a little closer, and then I shot a different vertical, but in tighter on the petals. So you'll shoot a lot of different compositions because, like I say, once you leave there, you may never be able to go back and reshoot it, or it may not be there back when you go to reshoot. All right, this is a purple coneflower. We have a big field of them not far from my home. Typically, most of them look like this one you see down here, where the petals are just drooping straight down. And so I've got my boring shot of the purple coneflower, but I'm looking for something with character to it. So one morning I'm searching through the field with the purple coneflowers, and I come across this one right here. Now, this one, you can see there's a seed head that grew right next to the coneflower. And the coneflower, one of the petals reaches out and gives it a hug. And then you can see the flow of the petals down here is way more artistic than the standard coneflower, which they just fall straight down. And also, if you notice, there's a bug on the petal, a bonus. So if I hadn't taken the time to search and walk through the field, I would have never seen this. And again, of course, it would only last for a week or so and it'd be gone. Never to be photographed. So very important, get out there and shoot these characters, search out these characters. Now, this is a coneflower that is pretty typical of the coneflower, but what makes this interesting is the vine that grew up from the stem right around the stem and then right straight through the flower up to the top. So the vine is what makes it interesting. It's funny, I posted this image on Facebook on one of the flower groups, and this one guy says, you know, that would be a nice image if that vine wasn't there. I thought, well, that's the whole point of it, the vine. That's what makes it interesting. All right, look at this, two-headed Gerber daisy. Now, I've been picking up Gerber daisies at the local grocery store where they have flowers in there, and I've been picking these things up to photograph in my workshops for 20 some years. They always have one stem and one flower head. Well, this one morning I go in there to pick up some Gerber daisies and I come across a two-headed Gerber daisy and I thought, there we go. That's what I'm looking for, characters. So I just bring this home, set it up in my house, put my background behind it, and I photograph it right in my house. But yeah, that is a very unusual coneflower. Now, at the same grocery store in the flower department, they had the tulips coming in, pots of tulips in the springtime. And I'm going up and down the aisles looking at every single tulip. There must have been 50 pots of tulips, and I'm looking at every single pot, checking out every tulip. And you can see most of them all look like a typical tulip, right? But I come to this one, and here's one with a petal. That petal, for whatever reason, drooped down, and there's a green leaf perfectly aligned to catch it as it falls. So I buy this thing, take it home, set up at my house, put a background behind it, and there it is. So beautiful shot of his tulip. Again, something that people, when you see tulip shots, you're probably not ever going to see this. So that is what I'm looking for. Character, something that's a little different. It sets my flower photography apart if I can show you images that you've never seen before. Now, as I said, when you have these characters, shoot different compositions. That is the horizontal. I like that one the best. But here's a vertical shot of the same thing. Same shot, but vertical. And whoop. And then I also when I'm shooting indoors with my flowers, I let them go through the dying stage. And as they go through the dying stage, sometimes it creates a whole different composition of that flower that sometimes is unique, sometimes it's not. But that is the exact same flower, but now it's dying. And you can see this one petal right here is still being held up by that green leaf right there. This is Madeline Island, where I do a workshop with three other instructors. And in June, and this is what you see on the island, just a massive amount of lupins. They're beautiful. It's amazing. But as you can see, they're all straight. All those flowers grow straight. All right. And most everybody that's shooting them, that's what they're shooting, straight ones, see. But I don't like to shoot the straight ones. I'm looking for the ones that have something unique going on. And so I'm looking for something different. So here's one here that actually is one of my students in June last year actually found. And if you notice, this flower grew underneath the leaf and then straight up through the leaf there. So again, different than all the others, which are straight. That's what I'm looking for. This one here, look at how it grew so wildly here. It kind of doubled back on itself right here. So again, that's very interesting. I'm looking for the ones that have this unique curves and things and S curves and stuff in them, rather than just the straight up and down flowers. So that's what I'm looking for. Again, that's what's going to take my flower photography to another level. Here's another one, just a different formation of that lupin and how it grew right inside of this little group of leaves right here. Now, one of my students last June found a two-headed lupin. And I've been shooting on that island for 8 years now. Never ever seen a two-headed lupin. So I was really excited when she found this one because again, now I've got a shot of a two-headed lupin, which probably nobody else has. Just a pair of flowers. What I liked about this is I just liked the green leaf grew in between the little petals here. I thought that was kind of cool. This, Gerber daisies, typically all the petals are the same length, but here I have one with a little different length of the petal, something a little unique. So a little different. This is a black-eyed Susan flower covered in heavy frost, early morning frost. And when we had that heavy frost, I made sure to get out there and shoot because I knew that the flowers are going to be covered in this frost. So again, another image of a black-eyed Susan that very few people have because for one thing, in the area where I live, frost comes later than the flowers. They usually are long gone by the time we get frost. But this one particular year, we had a heavy early frost that coated those flowers. Now, if you remove the frost, because see, the frost is the character here, okay? If you remove the frost from that, what do you have? Well, you just got a close-up of a black-eyed Susan. It's okay, nothing special, but the frost is what makes it special. So that is the character. Uh, Sometimes you come across a dahlia that with real wild, crazy petals, and that's what I'm looking for. Look at all the flow of the artistic flow going on there in those petals. And then up in here in the top, you see this really nice little group right in here. And so then you just get in closer and pull that out, and you get a whole nother shot out of there. And another dahlia. This was in some lady's uh, her backyard. She grew dahlias, and I happened to run across this, and I asked her if I could shoot, and got this crazy shot of that. And all those artistic flow is what we're looking for. Flower backside. Okay, everybody's shooting from the front side. Don't forget about the backside. Sometimes they're interesting, sometimes they're not, but you got to at least check it out. So this is early morning, early spring, and these are dogwood bushes that the flowers are starting to come out. Most people are going to shoot the front side. This is the front side. I see the back side over here, and that's what I'm interested in. Why? Because everybody's shooting the front side. I want to have some shots of the back sides too. I want to have a varied portfolio of flowers, different types of styles. This is a trillium. Everybody shoots them from the front side. Why not shoot it from the back side? Get something really artistic on the back side. This is wild geranium. The back sides are very interesting. That green on the back of that purple looks very cool. Most people shoot Gerber daisies from the front side, but the back sides are pretty cool too. The backside have a beautiful textured center part there that holds the flower. Very cool. Another shot of a backside of a Gerber daisy. And dahlias, everybody shoots them from the front. Look at the back. The back is interesting too. So always check the backside. Here's a pot of dahlias on the lower right there at my home, and I found the backside of that flower right there that I shot in that pot. Fill the frame. It's another way to shoot. You know, again, if you're in a situation where you don't have backgrounds and you got clutter, maybe you can find a way to fill the frame with your flowers, and they just produce amazing images when you fill the frames. Now, this is an image that I posted this sunflower. I posted on one of the sites that I go to, flower sites. And this is a quote that I copied because I thought this is a perfect example of what I'm talking about is I like it. It's different, not the same single flower surrounded by a fuzzy out of focus background. You know what they're talking about? That single flower in the top third with the stem with a fuzzy out of focus background, the boring way. Everybody's shooting them. So this person is really likes what I've done here. I like it. It's different because I've got in there and I've focused and got all that nice sharp details of that center part, all the lines within the petals and that just makes a very nice image. Same with this one here. Really nice when you get inside those flowers and you can really pull out all the details because let's face it, flowers, centers like you see here, lots of interesting stuff going on in there, lots of veining going on in the petals. And you get in tight, fill the whole frame, you pull all that out of there. This is a, um, oh my God, hibiscus. Forget my flowers. Hibiscus flower shot at the Longwood Gardens outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And just a beautiful center of that flower. And another here. This is actually a mirror. I did a mirror of this flower in my smart photo editor. So I mirrored the left side onto the right side, creating that. Ranunculus flower. Again, they're large flowers where you can get in, zoom in, capture them real tight. Beautiful rose here. I bought at the flower stand in the grocery store, brought it home, set it up in my house, photographed it right in my home. Another nice tight shot of a flower. And look at that, black-eyed Susan. It's a little different, black-eyed Susan. And now, if you have tulips, typically you can't really shoot inside of them. You'd have to shoot right directly into them. You can't get a side view. So what you do is you pull off one of the petals on the side of the tulip, and it allows you to get inside there and photograph all the interesting parts. Here's another rose. Beautiful rose. I just did a little post-processing, create those interesting colors. And another dahlia with interesting curls. Now, if you can't get in real close, like I told you earlier, just shoot a larger area and crop out what you want in post-processing. So I don't really feel a need to have to get in real tight on it to frame it tight. I'll just shoot a little larger area, crop out in post-processing. Soft focus, different style of photography. This is, you know, going to that soft, abstract, very little in focus style. Now, a lot of people use a lens baby, all right, to do this. Lens babies give you that real soft, you know, very little in focus look. And this image right here was shot with the lens baby. So you can see very little, if any, in focus right there. This is a real popular style amongst a lot of flower photographies people. They tend to like this soft, dreamy look. It's kind of like you're in a hazy dream. And I like it. I tend to like more everything in focus images, like you saw most of my stuff I've been showing you, but this is another style that is real popular. Now, I will tell you that you don't have to have a lens baby to do this. You can take your macro lens and produce the same look, all right? So this was shot with my macro lens. Now, what you want to do is shoot at the smallest f-stop, 2.8, 3.5 of your lens, and that will give you the shallowest amount of depth of field. So what I do is I shoot into the side of the flower just to, you know, kind of get some depth of that flower from front to back, a lot of depth. And I shoot into the side of it, and I will usually find a petal of that flower that is closest to the front of my lens right there. And I'll place the focus there. Now at 2.8 on my macro lens, I'm only getting an eighth of an inch, maybe a quarter if I'm lucky when I get in this close. And so you'll get a little bit in focus, but then as you can see, as the lens goes and shows off the background, it's going to soften it down to the very background is going to be just a solid color. It's going to blur completely out. So this is an example of what I'm talking about. She's shooting on my stairs in my foyer. I've got this Gerber daisy. I'm shooting into the side of the Gerber daisy. Now I will find the tips right here, the petals closest. These are closest to the front of my lens. That is where I'm going to place my focus on those tips. And with that small 2.5, or maybe you go to a 3 or 3.5, 2.8, I mean, you will get very little in focus on those tips. And when you shoot it, you'll get that little bit of focus is all you're going to get at that small f-stop. And then you can see how it blurs out the flower in the background. And those are the stairs in the background. The stairs have completely blurred out because there's no depth of field there. All right, this is a Himalayan blue poppy shot at a botanical garden. And again, there's the edge of the petals that are closest to the front of my lens. That's where I place my focus. And then you can see with a small f-stop, you get this nice soft blur and then a total blur out in the background. Beautiful. And again, like a lens baby does, same kind of look. Now, why do I put my focus in the foreground? Because when someone views your image, they are looking for something in focus. Now, if the focus is in the foreground, it's easy to spot. But if you place this focus back into the center of the flower right here, watch what happens to the petals in the front. A massive blur in the foreground. That's not very appealing to me. I've got to look through this giant ugly blur to get to the focus point. So that's why I'm focused in the foreground and then let it soften into the flower and soften to the background. Another little flower here where I just, orchid, it's an orchid. He just focused on this little guy right here. Nice soft focus throughout at that small f-stop. And this one here, there's the tip, shooting into that tip closest to the front of my lens right there. Look at the beautiful softness of the flowers in the background and the petals. So it's a really unique style. This is one that I set up my camera and I focus right on the tip here, right on that tip close to the front of my lens. And there's the focus point right in the foreground and then soften into the background. All right, now lighting. You can do some special effect lighting. I don't use any flash systems. I don't use any type of lighting aids. Everything I shoot is natural light, and that could be when I'm shooting outdoors or indoors. In my house, I'm using natural light. If I'm outdoors, I'm only using natural light. I don't use any flash systems. It's all natural. Now, I do use sunlight for special effect. So if you get out there real early morning, I mean at daybreak when the sun is right on the horizon, just coming up over the horizon, and you're in a field of flowers, you can walk towards that sun, all right, and study the plants, and you'll see this kind of rim lighting, highlighting on the all around the outsides of these flowers. So you can see here, and this is a young moth mullein. Those are just buds on the moth mullein. They haven't opened up into flowers yet, but you can see all the tiny, tiny little hairs on the stem, around the buds, just thousands of little tiny hairs all around, and that is pretty cool. Now, if the sun gets up a little higher, you don't get that backlighting. Once it gets up a little higher, you can't even see those little hairs. They are so tiny, but it's the sun that makes them stand out like that. Here's a budding black-eyed Susan flower. It's in the budding stage, and you can see again with the backlighting, look at the hairs on the leaves and the stem and all around the flower there. It just really glows. It has a rim lighting. And sometimes you get flowers where you get backlighting on the flowers, the petals, and it creates a little highlighting in the petals where you get some shadow effects and bright areas and just real interesting effects can happen from backside of flowers. This is a flower where you can see that is covered in dew, and you can see all of the dew around the outside highlighting of that flower. And this is a fun thing to do. Go into a room, darken down the room, get a tulip or any type of flower that has a large opening, and darken that room down. And then take a little flashlight or a light and shine it inside of that tulip, and you will get a glow on the backside. And you want the room to be dark so that the glow will stand out. Otherwise, if the room is bright with a lot of light, you won't even see the glow of the tulip. So go into a room, darken it down, shine the light inside the tulip, and it'll cause a glow on the backside of the tulip like you see there. It's a fun thing to do. And this is kind of like that highlighting I just showed you with the sun backlighting, but no, this was done in post-processing. So in my smart photo editor program that I use, there is a filter in there somewhere. There's 8,000 filters, but there's a filter in there somewhere that gives this kind of glow around the outside of your subject. So you can do it naturally with sunlight, you can do it with your little flashlight indoors, or you can do it with post-processing with your special effect lighting. Get down low. Sometimes it's fun to get down underneath the flowers and shoot underneath and shoot up towards the sky. So these are some black-eyed Susans. Just got the camera down real low, shut up. Different perspective. So again, always want to have a lot of different styles in your portfolio. Rule of three, you may have heard that as a rule. Sometimes they say it's best to shoot threes rather than, odd numbers are better than even numbers. So no twos, fours, shoot 1, 3, 5. I don't agree with that. I don't follow that rule. This is more what they were talking about, rule of threes, but I find rule of twos work just fine. I have tons of flower shots with just two flowers in the scene, and so I don't have any problem with twos. So it is a rule that some people follow. I don't really follow it that much. If I see two really cool flowers, I'm going to photograph them. All right. Yeah, they work just fine. All right, natural flower vase. Now, out in the woods, many, many, many years ago, like 20 some years ago, I found these old tree trunks laying on the forest floor, and some of them would have an opening or a cavity in that tree trunk. And I would find these old cavities and I would buy flowers and I would put the flowers into that cavity and it becomes a natural flower vase for the flowers. Now, when you shoot them, you want to make sure that the flowers don't cover the hole, the complete hole. You want to leave, some so where the viewer can see the hole there, because if you cover the whole hole, it just looks like flowers laying on top of a tree trunk. So you want to leave a little gap somewhere so the person will say, "Oh, there's a hole there. Oh, those flowers are growing out of that hole," and you want to make sure they have that opening. Same with this one here. I found this old tree trunk and I thought that's a cool tree trunk, but by itself, it's okay. It's pretty interesting, but it needs something. So I put these flowers inside of there. And again, if you notice, I leave a little bit of the hole showing so that the viewer can see that it's coming out of a hole. Again, natural flower vase. Here's one of my favorites here. These look like tulips, but they're not. They're actually what they call orange star flowers, and they're tiny. Those things are only 3/4 of an inch tall, less than an inch tall, those little flowers. And found them at the flower department in the grocery store. This old tree trunk sat out in the woods for 4 months before I found a flower small enough that would fit into that little opening. And so that's what I use that for. All right, this is the same tree trunk. That's that trunk right there, same trunk, but now it's a vertical. I mean, going from vertical to horizontal, and it's a different flower, little tiny flowers that I put inside there. But now the wood has a more of a warm tone to it. I did in Photoshop, and but then you see here, that's the natural tone of the wood, but I did a little different, warmer tone in there. Now this is a fun thing to do if you can pull it off. It's not easy. But you'll see that's a oxeye daisy flower in the background there. And you notice that these two blades of grass that are connected together, there are just hundreds of little dewdrops. And in all the dewdrops, all the way up and down there, you can see my little daisies coming right into the center of that dewdrop. Now, what you want to do is you want to set up your flower so it's behind the dewdrop. Now, you may have to move the flower closer or farther away. I mean, if you get it too close, you won't be able to really see the flower. You'll just see a portion of the flower. You want to see the whole flower in the dewdrop. So you may have to move it back a ways so you can see that the flower is in the dewdrop, like you see on these here. You can see the whole flower in the dewdrop. So a little challenging. Now you want to use a clamp like I have my clamp that I showed you. This is an old clamp, so it looks a little different. But I've got the clamp holding the flower behind the blade of grass with the dew. And then again, you may have to maneuver that flower back and forth. And then when you shoot it, all right, you'll want to make sure you shoot at a smaller f-stop number. And all you want in focus is the flower inside of the dewdrop. And you want to kind of blur out the flower in the background, which you will do when you're shooting with a small f-stop number. Make sure your focus is on the flower in the dewdrop, and then with that shallow depth of field, it'll soften the flower in the background because you don't want too much details in that flower because it's going to take away from seeing all the little dewdrops with the flowers in it. So it's fun, and if you can pull it off, it's pretty rewarding. Not easy to do. You got to get out there early in the morning when the dew is on the grass and all that and find yourself some grass. All right, and you're going to need your stake and your clamp. All right, help out of plain flower images. So let's say you have an image like this on the left here, just kind of plain looking. Maybe, you think, it's just so boring with that background like that. Well, when you go into post-processing, you can add some some kind of texture on top there to make it look a little more interesting. So you kind of make it a little artsy looking, all right? Now in Smart Photo Editor, the program that I use for my post-processing, they have thousands and thousands of different filters, and you can just add on a filter on top. So here's a little prairie cone flower. You can see kind of boring looking over here, but I give it kind of a rustic background on this one, and I like that. And then this is the purple cone flower. You've seen this earlier in the program, and I have a cracked finish that I applied over top of that. Makes it look a lot more interesting with that cracked finish on there than the one on the left. Um, Same with the image on the left. That's just the natural greens of the background of that, and then I just added a kind of a blue filter to kind of give it an interesting blue tint in the background. Um, this is a common mullein with a vine that's growing around it, and again, when I brought it out of the camera, it was just a white background, and then I added this creative filter, and it's just really just a left click of the mouse to add the filter on there, and adds a nice little look to it. Another one, just another filter that I used on these flowers, and little lady slipper. Yeah, so sometimes I get images and I think, it's kind of boring looking, but if I can add some kind of a filter to make it more creative, I will do that. This one here, I shot it because I like this little curl right here. Remember the character I was talking about? I like that little character right there. I thought that was cool, but I did something really crazy with this one. I did a mirror effect. So there's a filter in Smart Photo Editor where you bring the image in, you crop the image the way I wanted it, and then you mirror it. So you take the image on the left and it mirrors it on the right, just flips it over to the right side. Something different. Dead flowers, don't forget the dead flowers. Um, this time of year, we're getting into fall, going to be into winter, and a lot of photographers start putting their equipment away for the winter, but I go out in the wintertime and search out the fields with dead flowers. So this is an old dead purple cone flower here on the left. Use my background behind it. And then in my post-processing, because again, it's kind of boring, I added this kind of distressed vignette, white vignette around the outside of it to make it look a little bit more interesting. These are some zinnias that at the farm near my home, the flower farm, they had these dead zinnias there. And I give them used a pencil filter in Smart Photo Editor as a pencil, so it gives it kind of a pencil drawing. So it makes it a little bit more interesting than just brown dead flowers. This is the back of a dead sunflower. This is a sunflower, big head of a sunflower that died, and this is the backside. So all I wanted to do is come in here and capture just this. I want to pull out just this area right in here, and there it is. That was frost. All those little white specks on it, that's all frost, early morning frost. And again, lots of different types of dead flowers out in the fields, and I'll photograph them. And you get some interesting shots. And again, I'll usually have to do some kind of creative post-processing, kind of help them out a little bit, because by themselves, dead flowers are not that interesting. But if you can do something creative in the post-processing, it makes them more interesting. How to avoid the wind. All right. So this is how I do it. Um, I'm an early riser. I'm up at 5 in the morning. Every single morning I wake up at 5 o'clock. And in the months when the flowers are out, um, the first thing I do is look at the forecast for the upcoming week. I would much rather shoot on a cloudy day than a sunny day. I just like I like it when it's cloudy out rather than sunny. Too harsh when the sun's hitting everything. So I will look at the forecast for the next week and I'll say, here's a Wednesday, it's going to be cloudy. All right. All right, let's go out on Wednesday. So now on Wednesday morning, I wake up at 5 o'clock like I always do. I will walk downstairs. I will walk to the door wall at the back of my house where our patio is, and I will look outside and I will look at the flowers in the pots and I will look at the trees and the leaves. And if I can see that everything is dead still and it's dark yet. It's still dark at, 5 o'clock in the morning. And if I see that everything is dead still, then that's going to be a good morning to go out. I've got no wind. All right. So I will go out 20 minutes. I will be driving to the park in the dark, and I will time it so I will get to the park right at daybreak. I want to be there as soon as there's light to shoot. And I will get out in the field and start shooting. And I will get about an hour and a half to 2 hours of no wind or at least very low wind. All right. And so I'm going to have a great time shooting without having to deal with any wind. Now, once the sun starts to get up behind those clouds and the air starts to warm up, that's when the wind starts to move and it starts to get windy, and then I'm packing up and going back home. So I get about an hour and a half, 2 hours, and then when things start to move from the wind, as the air heats up, I'm heading back home. I am not dealing with that wind. Everything I shoot is on early morning, no wind. Now, what happens on that Wednesday? I wake up at 5 o'clock and I go downstairs. I look out that door wall and I see the flowers moving back and forth, and I see the leaves on the trees moving around. There's wind out there. Guess what? I'm not going out. I am just not going to deal with that wind. I can go out any days, 7 days out of the week and shoot. I don't need to go out there when it's windy. So I only go out in those mornings when there's no wind, and that makes my life a lot easier. And the other benefit of going out there early in the morning is if you're a bug photographer, which I do a little bit of, um, you get out there in the early morning on those cool mornings, especially when it's in the upper 40 degrees Fahrenheit, low 50 Fahrenheit. Um, the temperature of the bugs will lower down to the point where they literally cannot move until the air warms them up. Similar to what you'll see, a bug photographer will capture a bug, put it in the refrigerator. The refrigerator lowers the body temperature. They take the bug out, put it on a flower, and photograph it before it starts to warm up. So that it happens naturally out in nature when the temperature at night goes down. So when I'm out there in looking at flowers and stuff, I'm walking around. I run into bugs on those mornings, and I will photograph some of those bugs. I can set up my tripod, I can set up my framing, I can use a background behind it, and those bugs are going nowhere until it warms up. So that's another benefit to being out there in the mornings. If it's a cool morning, then you'll get some bug shots if you're in those fields and you're paying attention. So, but yeah, get out of bed early in the morning, get out there before the wind picks up, and if you go out later in any time during the day where I live or where most people live, there is wind. There's going to be wind out there, and it's just difficult to shoot. All right, gang, I have a flower photography club online that I will be starting after January 1st, 2026. And it'll be kind of similar to what you're seeing here. It's kind of like a monthly meeting where people will come together. I'll have speakers, different speakers each month, and we will cover all kinds of different things about flower photography. And that will start after January 1st. If you're interested in that, email me. Go to my website, which is mikemoats.com. You can, while you're there, look at my images, workshops, and stuff. And there's a contact page that you can contact me and say, hey, here's my email. I just want to be notified when there's signups after January 1st for the Flower Photo Club online. All right. I will stop my share and be more than happy to hang out and answer any questions you may have.
Mike, thank you very, very much for that. Fascinating and really interesting presentation. We
Thank you.
do have a very small number of questions, and as I mentioned to people, if you have any questions, please type them into the chat facility. So a lot of these are technical questions.
Hmm.
Um, so Bernie says absolutely stunning images. And do you do a lot of post-processing on your images?
Fair amount. Yeah. I mean, if you saw my images that come out of the camera, which you actually saw some of those before and afters, where I was showing with the backgrounds, they're not all that pretty. They don't come out of the camera looking all that good. So yeah, there's a certain amount that you have to do in your post-processing to bring out all that beauty of that flower. And like I said, the program that I use, which is called Smart Photo Editor, comes out of England actually. It's $29 US, $29. It's super cheap, and it's got over 8,000 creative filters. And so I use those creative filters to enhance my images to make them look a lot better.
Okay, actually, that's interesting because one of the other questions is, what photo editor do you use? So it's called Smart Photo Editor.
Yes, you better write it down because you'll forget it. It
Yeah,
took
that's
me
an
a month to
interesting one.
lock it into my brain.
Yeah.
Smart Photo Editor. Now, if you look it up on a Google search, it doesn't actually come up on the first 4 or 5 pages. You have to go down to about 4 or 5, and you'll see this word anthropodic. Oh my God, what's the name of the company? Anthropic. That's it, Anthropic. It's called Anthropic. That is the company, I guess, that produced this. And then you'll see after the word Anthropic, you'll see Smart Photo Editor. You click on that link, it'll take you right to Smart Photo Editor. And again, I bought it 5 years ago. It was actually an ad I saw on Facebook, and I clicked on it. I go, hey, this looks pretty interesting. Oh, it's only $29. What do I got to lose? And now it's my main program for all my processing when I bought it 5 years ago. Now, 5 years ago, it said it was $59 on half off for $29. Well, here it is 5 years later, and it's still half off for $29. They have not raised the price in 5 years. But just an amazing program with just all kinds of cool features.
As you were speaking there, Mike, I did a quick Google search myself and I just typed in the URL for the website for people there is the chat facility. If you
Yeah.
want to have a look at that, you'll see it. Um, so Levan was wondering, when you shoot backlighting, does the sunlight go through the pre-printed background?
No, I mean, you have to obviously the sun can't be directly behind the subject. Usually the sun, like where I shoot in the fields, there's some woods in the background and the sun is up above the woods, but it's still backlighting the subject, but it's not directly behind the subject because obviously you'd have a problem with the sun blowing out in your screen. But yeah, you'll want the sun a little bit above the horizon, and then you'll be wanting to shoot so that you don't have that sun directly behind your subject. And you'll just get that rim lighting, that highlighting around your subject. It's a really cool look when you can get it.
Okay. Boom, boom, boom. Yeah. So Nilesh Taylor, who's from Finland, wants to know what's your view of technology using focus stacking?
Okay, so this is controversy, very controversial how I shoot. I shoot at the highest f-stop of my lens, f32. All right. Now, most photographers that are familiar with their lenses and they've always been told never shoot at f32 or anything over f16 because it causes diffraction, right? In other words, your images are going to come out of the camera a little bit soft, a little bit out of focus. Not like way out of focus, just a little bit soft on the details. The great thing about digital photography is we have software. Every software program, whether it's Photoshop, Nik software, Topaz, Smart Photo Editor, they all offer sharpening programs. And sharpening programs are designed to sharpen your image if they're a little soft. And so I've been doing this for 21 years now, using software to sharpen my images shooting at the high f-stop. If you notice all my images, everything's in focus, front to back, top to bottom, side to side. That's the style I like. And in order to get that maximum amount of focus out of my lens, I'm shooting at the highest f-stops. Now, again, they're going to come out a little bit soft when they come out of the camera, but once I apply my sharpening and my post-processing, they all look tap sharp, which you saw in the images here today. And if you go to my website, you can see the same thing. They're all nice and sharp. And that is the sharpening that's applied in post-processing. Even though I've shot at the F-32, gotten the diffraction from the F-32, I've been able to correct it. Just like we correct a lot of stuff in post-processing, right? We correct exposures, we correct contrast, we correct colors. We do all kinds of corrections in post-processing. So those sharpening programs are designed to sharpen your images if they're a little soft. And so that's what I use to eliminate the diffraction from the F-32. But my main goal is get everything in focus.
Okay. Um, Now, there was one or two others. Yeah. So just going back to the software. So just to clarify for people, Mike does not use Photoshop or Lightroom. It is
No.
this software called Photo Editor from that
Yeah.
anthropics.com.
Smart
Um,
photo editor.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I don't use
So
Photoshop. Haven't used it for years. Um,
yeah, yeah. Okay, I've actually been looking through here as you've been speaking. My apologies. I don't see any other questions, but there are lots of comments here saying how much people have enjoyed the presentation. It was very informative, very inspiring. I see stunning presentation, amazing pictures, words like that. So I'd just like to echo those comments from the people, and thank you very, very much,
you're
Mike,
welcome. Yeah.
for the presentation. I'll tell you what was interesting tonight. We had people joining us from the west coast of the States, like Joanne, all the way through to Auckland. No, sorry, not Auckland. The various places in New Zealand. And
Hmm.
Bastian is there, and she's not in Auckland, but she's in one of the other cities in New Zealand. So um, quite a good spread of possibilities of people joining us. I do see Diana Guerin is asking, will the recording be available? Yes, it will, Diana. Uh, Hopefully next week, and it'll be on the FIAP YouTube channel. So if you go into YouTube and look for the FIAP channel, you will find this recording there, along with recordings of other presentations that guests like Mike have made to the FIAP Photo Academy, which is a good way of letting me tell you that our next presentation will be early in 2026. We will not have anything now in November or in December, but it will be in early 2026. And everybody who registers for this, we will let you know about it. If you do not want to receive any notification about these upcoming events, just please send us an email to our email address, which is fiapphotoacademy@gmail.com, and we will not send it to you. We will remove your email from our mailing list. So, Mike, again, on behalf of everybody, I would just like to say thank you very, very much for such an interesting and fantastic presentation. You're obviously an expert in what you do, and you so kindly shared what it is that we have to do and how we do it. It wasn't just photographs, but it was sharing lots of information for people, and we really do greatly appreciate that.
Yeah.
So
The main point is that expanding your portfolio of flowers so you just don't have those boring flower shots that I talked about. You know,
exactly,
if you really want to, impress people with your flower photography, expand in all these different ranges. Because everybody's got the boring shots, and of course you want to stand out from everybody else, and that's how you do it. It's all right there in the program.
yeah, exactly. So thank you very much, and on behalf of all of us here in the Fiat Photo Academy, I'm going to say again, thank you very, very much, and I'll say good night because it's now a quarter past 8 in the evening for me here. Good morning, or basically we just say good day, and thanks to everybody for being here. It's been
Thanks a lot for
absolutely
having me.
fantastic.